I think I can only confirm what the Group CEO of Qatar Airways said. It is true. There were negotiations for Qatar Airways to acquire 49% stake in RwandAir. I can only confirm that at this point. And once we have more details, then we'll be able to share that.
If that goes through, what would it mean for RwandAir?
I think it's great for an airline like RwandAir to partner with a world-class airline like Qatar Airways. There's a lot of synergies that would tap into, and the potential for growth would be huge for the airline, and it would be beneficial for the entire African continent.
Yeah. Can you maybe talk about two synergies that you think
I think let me stop there. Let me stop there. Sorry.
Okay, no, thank you very much.
Well, we should be closing the deal soon, not in not too distant future, because for us, this investment and the relationship between my country and Rwanda is very important.
Right. Soon, do you have timeline?
Well, it should finish before the middle of this year.
What are some of the aspects of this deal?
The aspects of this deal is nothing more than our investment in the airport, which has already been concluded. We have signed. We have, we are going ahead with what we have agreed. As far as the airline is concerned, we are still in negotiation. But even though we are in negotiations, we have signed an MOU, which is important. Now we are only looking at the small wordings of the contract. And we should just be finished, and we will make sure that Rwanda becomes an important hub in Africa.
Can you tell us a little bit about the performance of Qatar Airways in Kigali?
Good. Otherwise, we would not be continuing our operations to Kigali.
Yeah. Well, how is the airline performing in terms of the profit revenues?
Our airline has a budgeted loss because of the blockade, and our performance against our budget is better than what we envisaged.
Besides RwandAir and the airport, is there anything else that the airline is interested in investing in Rwanda?
There is an interest by Qatar Airways to invest in hotel. When we grow the airline, you will need accommodations for the staff. You will need to bring some specialized people who are expats. You will need to provide for accommodations for your cabin crew closer to the airport. So there will be opportunities for other investment from other government entities that develop real estates in the state, from the state of Qatar.
Any challenges so far?
At the moment, no, because we have not yet come to the bridge to cross it. When we are there, then we'll tell you if there is any issues. Let me go to the Rwanda investment. We will invest in Rwanda the kind of investment that the country can digest. At the same time, we will invest as much as investment required for us to have in the things we are developing there. We are not a cash cow as a country. We are very prudent very careful in how we operate or how we invest, and this is what we are going to do. So whatever investment is required for us to reach the level of operation we want both at the airport and in the airline, we will invest.
Operations, if you could maybe shed more light on the kind of investment you're making in Rwanda. How much are you investing in the medium or long term?
Let me go to the Rwanda investment. We will invest in Rwanda the kind of investment that the country can digest. At the same time, we will invest as much as investment required for us to have in the things we are developing there. We are not a cash cow as a country. We are very prudent very careful in how we operate or how we invest, and this is what we are going to do. So whatever investment is required for us to reach the level of operation we want both at the airport and in the airline, we will invest.
So we just met here at the Qatar, one of the biggest conferences in the Middle East. We've seen a lot of discussions happening. What are the key takeaways? What is happening across the industry in Africa?
I think that the conference is addressing different challenges in the industry as well as the different trends happening in the industry. Today we talked a lot about aviation access in Africa, Middle East. We've talked about sustainability and the environment, which is another key area. Which is another key area for aviation as a whole. The conference has also been good in terms of networking and meeting with different stakeholders in the airline industry, airports, the regulators. So it's been very interesting touching base with the different stakeholders.
Yeah. When you look at the outlook, you spoke a lot about things like the operational cost being very high, the geopolitics, which is not good. Trade wars is something that was also talked about. Where do you see yourself and how do you navigate in all these things that are happening at the moment as an airline?
What we're discussing was mainly about aviation. During my panel was about aviation access in Africa. The challenges that we face, whether it's the high operating cost, the high cost of fuel, which is 20% higher than in Africa than it is in Europe. The cost of the airport charges, navigation, overflying, the cost of getting skilled labor as well to work in the industry. The issue of the visa regimes in different countries, which limit the free movement of people within the continent. There's a lot of potential for aviation in Africa, given the size and the population of the continent, 1.2 billion, whereas we account for less than 3% of the total aviation traffic. So there is a lot of potential for the industry. We just need to address all these gaps in order to really open up and stimulate the growth of traffic in the continent.
How to create African airlines profitable?
I think African airlines are at a disadvantage. In addition to the issue of liberalization, and to your point about the low GDP, we have the disadvantage of just the cost of operating in the African continent. If you look at fuel pricing, which is 20% higher than in Europe, if you look at navigation, parking, overflying, 20% higher. You look at any parameters that you look at, maintenance, 50% higher. So the cost of doing business for African airlines, which hinders the profitability, is also the cost of operations. But I think also in terms of access for African countries, there's very limited trade within the African continent, which then limits the number of movements of goods and people between African countries. But I believe with the implementation of the Continental Free Trade Area, which should come into effect this year, we'll see a lot of potential in terms of travel. If you take care of the cost of doing business, that demand will be there because people will want to trade amongst each other. So we should be able to see some improvement in that front. The challenge with African Airlines as well is because of those high costs, we raise ticket prices. Once you raise ticket prices, then you limit the number of passengers who can actually access those tickets. So you find a passenger would rather drive 16 hours or go on a bus 16 hours to Nairobi instead of taking a one-hour flight to Nairobi. So it becomes a vicious cycle. So we need to address some of those challenges. Another big challenge is also the issue of visas. We have only 14 countries out of the 55 African countries that allow visa on arrival for Africans. For most of the other countries, it's a long, lengthy process. You wait for a week and you have to pull teeth to get a visa to that country. I would pick the example of Rwanda. Rwanda allows visa on arrival for all Africans. And as soon as that was implemented, we saw a 25% increase in tourism. We saw trade shooting up, intra-African trade shooting up. Just with DRC, it went up by 73%. So we have live evidence of the benefits of opening up, whether it's visas or opening up our skies. So we need to get to it. African countries need to get to it because we need to give better access to our citizens. What we have right now just doesn't work. There are very few point-to-point connections. Somebody moving from Accra to Kinshasa can't go direct, has to go via Kenya, via Paris. Kigali, some via Paris. So that's a big challenge, and that's something that we need to address. Okay. We need to look at that cost. Governments need to realize the overtaxation increasing airport charges every year, that's not the solution. We need to rethink this whole sector, aviation sector within the African context, looking at the cost structure.